Curiosity is to the creative person what hunger is to a person who is starving. The power that moves us to be creative comes from the act of being deeply human. The desire to be creative is sometimes hidden. Create. Give new form to old meaning. Create what you can when you can. Touch other people's lives. Heal. Create with self-indulging generosity. Act creative. Make a move that no one expects. Create many great things with one small, insignificant act. Create kindness. Create beauty. So this is for us, Make Your Life Your Art by Charlotte Erickson. So this is for us. This is for us who sing, write, dance, act, study, run, and love. And this is for doing it, even if no one will ever know. Because the beauty is in the act of doing it, not what it can lead to. This is for the times I lose myself while writing, singing, playing, and no one else is around and they will never know. But I will forever remember. And that shines brighter than any praise or fame or glory I will ever have. And this is for you who write or play or read or sing by yourself, with the light off and the door closed. When the world is asleep and the stars are aligned, and maybe no one will ever hear it or read your words or know your thoughts, but it doesn't make it less glorious. It makes it ethereal, mysterious, infinite. For it belongs to you and whatever God or spirit you believe in, and only you can decide how much it meant and means and will forever mean. And other people will experience it too, through you, through your spirit, through the way you talk, through the way you walk and love and laugh and care. And I never meant to write this long, but what I want to say is, don't try to present your art by making other people read or hear or see or touch it. Make them feel it. Wear your art like your heart on your sleeve, and keep it alive by making people feel a little bit better, feel a little bit lighter. Create art in order for yourself to become yourself, and let your very existence be your song, your poem, your story. Let your very identity be your book. Let the way people say your name sound like the sweetest melody. So go create. Take photographs in the woods, run alone in the rain, and sing your heart out high up on the mountain where no one will ever hear. And your very existence will be the most hypnotizing scar. Make your life be your art, and you will never be forgotten. Second reading is Air and Light and Time and Space by Charles Bukowski. You know, I've either had a family, a job, something has always been in the way. But now, I've sold my house. I found this place, a large studio. You should see the space and the light. And for the first time in my life, I'm going to have a place and the time to create. No. If you're going to create, you're going to create. Whether you work 16 hours a day in a coal mine, or you're going to create in a small room with 3 children while you're on welfare, you're going to create. With part of your mind and your body blown away, you're going to create with a cat crawling up your back, while the whole city trembles in earthquakes, bombardment, flood, and fire. Air and light and time and space have nothing to do with it. And don't create anything except maybe a longer life to find new excuses for.
For some, it can be a terrifying thing. For others, it can be like a gift, an invitation, a possibility, a blank canvas. Maybe it's an uncertain or an undefined wide open future, or it's a little cursor on the blank Word document, or it's a schedule now freed, broken open because something has changed in your life. Now you have a blank canvas. Because some context, relationship, some task or situation shifted, changed. The ground beneath your feet, the air you breathe somehow changed, and before you lies uncharted territory, a blank canvas. For some, perhaps that is a gift, an opening from what felt like constricted or a pre-scripted life, and for others, they notice that changing landscape. They are filled with anxiety and uncertainty, and they look at this blank canvas saying, what the blank? So I walked into a professor's office one day for, a normal conversation around epistemology and the study of knowledge and knowing, the theological anthropology of the soul, just a Tuesday afternoon conversation. And hanging there on the wall was this print, chaos, carefully with the slightest shift of line and angle and weight and ink, formed and morphed into order. At least that's how I saw it. But of course, perhaps it could be order ascending into chaos. But I looked at it for a few moments with one of those looks like you're looking at a stereogram poster where you need to unfocus your eyes to see the thing. So I was just kind of looking at it for a while, pretty bewildered and confused. I assumed that this must have been a misprint because chaos and order couldn't possibly be that closely related. I had grown up much preferring order than chaos, which I think developmentally most kids do in some way, routines, dependability, structure. But even more than that, I was much more of a paint-by-number person than a blank canvas sort of person. More of a let's draw a decipherable piece of art that represents something that I see in the natural world, like a tree or a house or the sun, as compared to scribbles or what I might have called them inside, crayons spiraling into chaos. So later, this was confirmed with a deep source of wisdom in my generation from the movie Ghostbusters. So whether you've seen this or not, you can understand this. There is a power. There's an energy that is released, or when it's uncontrolled or unhampered by boundaries and structures, becomes destructive to everything around it. That is the energy that fuels the ghosts, which are wreaking havoc over the city and the people and creating state-puffed marshmallow men. And if you know the movie, you know the red and gray traps where these are stored, this energy, much to the EPA's dismay, in the Ghostbusters warehouse. And these traps are filled with the collective negative energy from these ghosts. When you have a container, by its very nature, it has limits, boundaries, edges. I loved this imagery because there was something safe. There was a container, and it was the good Ghostbusters doing this. So it confirmed all of my sense that the world should be orderly and structured and things were clear and set. So at times I wonder if we think about creativity as either or. That containment is safe and lack of boundary is bad instead of both and. With room for flexibility and interpretation and context, we tend to think that you are either creative or you're not. At least that's how I grew up thinking about it, and I was not. That you think outside the box, you're eccentric, you engage in the arts and these ethereal sort of things, or you're boring and conventional and uninteresting and you want to go to seminary. The either or, of course, often ignores the realities of life. The complexity and the diversity of human experience and possibility, the close proximity, and just the slightest slip of a pen that separates chaos and order. There is a reason at times that we have containers, that we have clear boundaries or guidelines, that we have filters in our actions, in our language, in our society. Otherwise, toxic fumes just fly into the air, often out of DC. Toxic words fly out of unfiltered mouths, or toxic actions, beliefs fly out of the world. Limits and clarity are sometimes really important, really helpful. But within a container, there can be space. There can still be room for breath and movement and change, for creativity. Even a blank canvas has some edges, some intentional area to know where to begin and where to end. It seems the canvas on which we live can have some definition, some clarity, with those edges and boundaries feeling not constrictive or containing. The boundaries could be understood not as limitations, but perhaps part of our identity in life. If we think of our life as a canvas, those edges, those borders hold who we are, that we are human, that we live on earth, that we come from a particular culture or a particular background, that we grew up in a particular family, that our identity is formed and shaped out of our social location. Our canvas is made up of hopes and dreams and the story of our people, whoever they are. And while in some ways those things can be limiting, in other ways they can be proud sources of identity, of inspiration, of deep wells of wisdom and narrative to help guide how we sculpt or color or craft our life. Air and light and time and space have nothing to do with it, writes the poet Charles Bukowski. You are going to create, says, within the particular confines, whatever they are, you're going to create if your heart and your mind is intent about creation. Air and light and time and space have nothing to do with it. Creativity need not mean just a certain type of person or activity or art form. Sometimes creativity happens right within the chaos or the complexity of what seems like a very uncreative life or existence on the surface. And the art or the writing or the relationships or the games or the stories or the food or the literal life of a child is an act of creation. It doesn't need to be a masterpiece in a museum to be infused with creativity. Gabriel Marcel in The Mystery of Being writes, creativity is not necessarily the creation of something outside the person who creates. To create is not essentially to produce. There can be production without creation, and there can be creation without any identifiable object remaining to bear witness to the act of creation. I think that we must all, they write, in the course of our lives, have known beings who are essentially creators. By the radiance of their charity and their love shining forth, they add a positive contribution to the invisible work which gives the human adventure the only meaning which can justify it. I wonder at times what the word create invites us into. Our social connotations with the word tend to lean toward production of something, making something, creating something new, often out of material or color. To create is to take the inner spirit and put it into something tangible, tactile, that you can feel or that you can see or that you can touch or hold. And sometimes that is very true. Of course, to create something tangible can be creative, both in a very literal understanding, but also in less tangible ways. You create an experience, you create a reaction, you create a moment through art. In a recent conversation with a group of younger adults at the church, and if you don't know about this group, we meet about once a month at Forager, and if you're interested, let me know. Young adult is loosely defined, so you can talk to me about that too. But among so many angles and perspectives in this conversation and experiences with the monthly theme of creativity, one of the areas that kept coming up was about language. The very language that we use is often what people make or produce. We ask a stranger or a new friend when we meet them, "What do you do?" Or we interact with a child, "What are you making?" And it isn't that these phrases are necessarily bad. At times they are exactly the best way to interact with someone. But our language leans toward addressing one another as human doings instead of human beings. Perhaps you're familiar with that phrase. Sometimes it is a simple phrase of a child, "Wow," about the snow, or the wind or a splash of color. Just a phrase, wow, at the slightest movement of an animal out the window, or a sense of amazement and wonder at the most seemingly simple things. It isn't about producing something tangible, necessarily. And it's not that producing something is bad, but when in the context of the wider productivity-focused culture, at times we easily sway into the necessity of creating objects to sell or to have, a culture that likes to make money off of creativity, which isn't necessarily bad, or a culture that encourages us to have stuff, cluttering our lives. Ben Cott, who's a contributing fellow from On Being, recently wrote about a life of productivity and the art of inefficiency, he says. He wrote, "On a soggy fall morning, my legs were burning and my heart racing from sprinting up a steep hill, and I stopped abruptly as I heard a string of words well up within me. 'If you don't have your heart, you have nothing,' the voice said. Breathing deeply, I pulled out my blaring earbuds and placed my hands at my sides. The words hovered over my head, and I knew exactly what they were telling me. If I don't have heart, I don't have anything." It was not a caution about my heart rate. It was a warning about the fallout from how I had been approaching life. Something deep within me had risen up and declared that my pace, as is, was not sustainable. Somewhere along the way, he writes, my obsession with productivity had eclipsed my passion and sense of purpose. I was obeying the greatest commandment of current startup culture. I was hustling, but I was losing my heart. I was becoming emotionally distant. I was extinguishing my inner fire for my work. To get my heart back, I would have to turn away from efficiency and embrace another way of being and doing. I would have to explore the art of inefficiency. So he said, I replaced running with a more unhurried, less outcome-focused practice of yoga. It was the least efficient thing I could think of doing, to move slowly and then be still on a mat for an hour in the middle of the day when I could have scheduled a lunch or caught up on a project. But since then, he says, habits like reflective writing, meditation, seeing a spiritual director have become powerful inefficiency experts, nourishing and protecting my soul from the incessant demands of efficiency when I'm not feeling the need to produce. He said, yoga, my children, many others, poetry, coffee, friends, shared or schooled me in the ways of inefficiency. These inefficiency experts gave me my heart back. Indeed, if I desire to effectively create healing in the world, I have no choice but to expand what he calls my inefficiency repertoire. Inefficiency experts are all around us, he says. It's time for us to slow down and pay attention, because if I disregard the inefficiency experts, I will crash and burn. To slow down and to pay attention is to create in a different way. Is to create some order, some intention right in the middle of the chaos, still embracing the complicated chaos of life. It's to create a space in a different way that Charles Bukowski says you don't need air and space and time and light. You just need some little space right in the middle of whatever you're already doing. You don't need a new studio. It's an echo of ancient teachings. From wisdom sayings in the Tao Te Ching, from Lao Tzu, spanning time and culture and tradition and text, the idea that the core of life is less about having and making and much more about being. An orientation and a practice of the heart toward a life of meaning and purpose and service and joy. So the question I'm left with is, how might I expand my inefficiency repertoire? It's an odd thing to consider putting in my report to the board. But who are our inefficiency experts in your own life? Who are yours, or what are yours? What practices or approaches or ways of being in life, what can we do, or perhaps more appropriately, how can we be in such a way that allows not some special place necessarily, but a space within us within our own hearts, within the clutter of life, to find our own creative spirit for moments of beauty and joy? How might we see our mistakes and our limits as part of our becoming what we might yet be? Or as another poet writes, I meant to do my work today. So many plans I had made. I'd check the mail, I'd make the calls, I'd save the world, and I'd sweep the halls. I'd finally get my accounting done, I'd sort my beans one by one, but I got waylaid by the morning sun, and I got absolutely nothing done. Perhaps the most creative thing is to pause and to breathe, make it into church in the middle of a snowstorm, right in the midst of spiraling chaos and order in our lives, and engage in whatever is our art form, and whatever our skill or the gift or the attunement of our heart is, to create and dwell in the most inefficient beauty we can find. May it be so. Amen. The hymn has come to us, Creative Spirit. It's in your order of service. Breathe deep the breath of life. Know that within the spiraling chaos, there are moments and possibilities and invitations into inefficient beauty. And there are inefficiency experts all around us, and most importantly, right within your heart. Notice, pay attention, and breathe. Amen.